In this video, I'm going to show you some easy and simple techniques to get great looking vehicles on the tabletop in no time at all. I'm going to paint a brand new Hekaton land fortress from the Leagues of Votann, and I'm going to paint it in the scheme of the Trans-Hyperian Alliance. Now don't worry if you're not painting yours in bright orange like I am. I'm simply showing you the tools and techniques I use so you can replace the colours I use with anything that are more relevant to your army. Let's get painting. The first thing I've done is prime the model with Wraithbone spray, so this is nice and bright to get a nice bright orange colour on here. I've also left the wheels off to make sure that it's easier to get into those nooks and crannies, and the first thing I'm going to do is take some black paint and paint all of the underside of the vehicle. Now take your time with this, you don't want to get it into those parts where you want to have the brighter armour colour later. If you do, you can always paint Wraithbone over it to correct any mistakes. Once I'm happy that that black is all in the places it should be, I'm now going to move on to the main colour, which I'm going to paint orange. So I'm going to base everything with Magmadroth Flame, which is a really nice rich contrast paint. And I'm going to make sure that I don't let this pool too much and that I'm not leaving brush strokes in it as well. So I'm just going to take my time over adding this, catching it if it pools. Of course, depending on what colour you want to paint your vehicle, then you're going to have to adjust this stage. Let me know in the comments what colour you're painting and if you need any help. So while you're waiting for all that contrast paint to dry and you're looking for something to do, why not check out this video's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends is a turn-based RPG full of great features. Collect and develop your champions and then test them in the PvP battle arena, follow the campaign storyline or raid dungeons for treasure and relics that will increase your power. The world of Teleria and over 600 champions await you and your adventures. High Elves are my favourite faction and I love two of their heroes. Elaine is an archer with fantastic ranged area of effect attacks, and Arbiter is an obscenely powerful melee machine. Look at that sword. Their backstory is pretty awesome. Their homeland Aravia has been around for thousands of years, surviving the fall of the Lizardman Empire. They also helped the first humans to form civilizations and defeated the Orcs when they formed a huge horde and attacked the continent. Unfortunately, Seroth, the Lord of Darkness, corrupted large numbers of elves and convinced them to attack their kin, causing a catastrophic and bloody civil war. This month is huge for Raid. They just released a brand new faction, the Sylvan Watchers, with some amazing new champions, including Forest Elves, Ents, Druids and Fae. You can also get your hands on some of the most powerful gear the game has ever seen with the Forge Pass. If you're an Amazon Prime member, you can also get additional exclusive rewards right now. It's the best time to get started in Raid. Click my link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen now and get unique bonuses worth $30. Get a free epic champion, Yriel of the High Elves, 200,000 silver, 1 energy refill, 1 XP boost and 1 ancient shard so you can summon awesome champions as soon as you get in the game. All your treasure will be waiting for you here. That Magmadroth Flame is going to form the base coat on the model, so I'm now going to take some Trollslayer orange and dry brush this over all of those orange areas. Now I want to make sure that the Magmadroth Flame is completely dry before I do this, and I want to start to focus and think about where I'm going to have the highest lights on the model. Continuing with the dry brushing, I'm going to move on to Fire Dragon Bright, and I'm looking to get this inside all of those Trollslayer areas and also on the most raised parts of the model, so where I've got armour panels I want to catch the edges to give myself a nice easy edge highlight, and across the middle of the vehicle I want to make sure that I'm getting a nice blended effect, and I do this by slowly adding more and more layers. The final highlight to really make that orange pop is Yriel Yellow, and again I use exactly the same technique, just dry brushing this inside that Fire Dragon Bright and only having a little bit on my brush so I can very easily control how much I put on to get a nice smooth blend. To sharpen up some of the edges on the armour, I went back to Fire Dragon Bright and used this in those areas where I had Trollslayer Orange. And again, where I had areas of Fire Dragon Bright dry brush, I used some Yriel Yellow just to sharpen the highlights out. This is an optional stage, you don't have to do it, it just does give that little bit more to the model. With all the orange done, it's time to move on to the silver metallics, and the colour I'm going to use is dark aluminium from Vallejo Metal Colour. Don't worry if you haven't got this, you can use Lead Belcher from Citadel. It's the same colour, the metal colour one's just a little bit more fluid and I find it a little bit quicker to paint with, and I'm looking for all those silver metallic parts, taking my time when I come up against those orange bits I've already finished. To shade all of that silver, I'm going to take some Nuln Oil, and again I'm going to apply this very carefully when it comes to those areas around the orange I've already finished, but just take your time with this and work your way around, make sure it doesn't pool in any areas. We'll use two techniques to highlight all of the silver. Firstly, we're going to lightly dry brush some Necron Compound over all of the roll bars on the model, as well as any large silver areas, such as where the main gun sits. Now you want to make sure the Nuln Oil is completely dry before you do this bit. Where we've got smaller silver areas or it's unsuitable to dry brush, we'll take some chrome from Valor Model Air and we'll just use this along the edges of the models to give them a nice sharp metallic look. Someone asked on my last video how you correct any mistakes you made, and I'll show you that here where I've made a couple. Essentially what you need to do is rebase that panel with the colour used. In my case it's Wraithbone. Then once that's completely dry, you can then go back in with the Magmadroth Flame and then highlight it up as you need to. Nice and easy. I've gone in and tidied up all of the black areas and we'll highlight them with two techniques similar to how we did the silver. First off, we're going to take a dry brush of Dark Reaper across all of those black roll bar elements. Now, take your time with this and be careful. You don't want to overload the area. I'm using a small makeup brush to do this. The next dry brush I'm going to do inside of that Dark Reaper is with Thunderhawk Blue. Again, taking my time not to apply too much. Then once I finish this, I'm going to use a little bit of Fenrisian Grey just to make that black area pop. Next up is Thunderhawk Blue, and I'm looking to get this little highlight inside the Dark Reaper from the previous stage. Taking my time with this, using the tip of the brush, again along the shape of the model. You can't really go wrong, but if you do, you can always fix it with a little bit of black paint. And finally on the black, it's a little bit of Fenrisian Grey just on those sharpest edges to really make them pop. Now make sure you haven't got too much paint on your brush, because that will really ruin a nice sharp highlight. I want to paint all of the lenses and view slits next, and there are quite a few on the model. So the first thing we're going to do is base them all white. And the colour I'm going to use is Bold Titanium White from Procryl, which will cover in one coat. But if you haven't got this, you can use White Scar, you can use AK White, whatever you've got. Just make sure you've got a nice even coat. And I'm going to paint all the lenses, all the buttons, and any screens on the model. I'm then going to use lots of contrast paint across all of these lenses. So for all the headlamps, I'm going to use Iyanden Yellow. Don't worry about getting this over the silver parts. Once it's dry, you can just paint over the frame with chrome to give a really nice headlamp effect. For any targeters or red lamps, I'm going to use Baal Red, which is a really nice powerful colour. And similarly, for any green lights or lamps or targeters that I think need a little variation, I'm going to use Karandras Green, which is a very, very nice and powerful green contrast paint. To paint any gold elements, I'll take Nazdreg Yellow and paint this over all of the silver parts that I've already painted. So for example, we've got the head of the AI constructs. We can just pop some Nazdreg Yellow on that and we've got an instant gold dome. Finally, to add some really nice popping elements on the model, I'm going to take some Frostheart and use this to paint all of the blue view slits, such as on the doors and on the ball turrets. This is a really nice bright colour that contrasts fantastically with the bright orange on the model. Once that's all done, it's time to shade some of the lighter elements. And I'm going to go for all the cream padding on the model. And the colour I'm going to use to shade it is Soul Blight Grey. Now this is going to give it a little bit of a dirty look, but stick with me. It does kind of look quite effective. Now you want to make sure that this is a nice even coverage, so be careful about it pooling. While we wait for that to dry, we can start on the tyres. Now I've sprayed these Mechanicus Standard Grey, and I'm going to take some Black Templar contrast paint and paint this over all of the wheels, leaving the silver in the middle. Now I'll base coat the silver with dark aluminium like I did the rest of the metal, but for the meantime I'm just going to make sure that I get a nice even coverage of Black Templar across the tyres. Now is also a good time for decals, so what I'm going to do is add some gloss varnish down where I'm going to apply decals. Now it's important that this dries thoroughly before we apply anything, but I'm just going to be selective based on where decals are on the box art. To add a little bit of muddiness to those wheels once that Black Templar is dry, we're going to take a nice dark brown. Now I'm using Rhinox Hide, and I'm going to thin this down with quite a bit of water, so about 4 or 5 parts water of paint, and I'm just going to work this into all those recesses across the wheel. I'm also going to take some Agrax Earthshade and paint this over all the silver elements of the wheel as well, making sure it settles into those recesses. Now I just want to give the wheels a dirty look. I don't want them to be too bright because they'll detract from the rest of the model if they are. I'm going to paint the frames of the canopies next, and the colour I'm going to base them with is this Vallejo Black Polyurethane Primer. It's what I use to airbrush in all my models when I'm priming them, but it sticks to the plastic a bit better than something like Abaddon Black, for example. And what we're looking to do is just paint this over all of the frame on the canopies, assuming you want to have a clear canopy. If you don't want a clear canopy, you can just prime this and paint it a different colour, but I'm going for clear canopies. It's important to be as careful as you can be when you're painting the frame of the canopy, but if you do make a mistake and get paint on it, it's not a huge issue. Just take a cocktail stick once it's fully dry, and you can use this to just scrape off any paint that you've spilt over onto those canopy areas. When you're applying the canopies to the model, I find it really important to use something that's not going to go wrong. So for example, if you use super glue or plastic glue, it may miss the canopy. I'm just going to use some PVA glue along where the canopy sits on the model. Once I've got that down, I'll stick the canopy on, and then any excess glue that pops out the side, you can just use a wet brush and blend it all in together. To highlight the canopy, I'm going to use the same colours I used when I was highlighting the black. So first off, I'm going to take some Dark Reaper and I'm going to paint this over the majority of the canopy so it mimics that nice volumetric highlight we've got across the top of the vehicle. Next up is Thunderhawk Blue, and I'm looking to get this little highlight inside the Dark Reaper from the previous stage. Taking my time with this, using the tip of the brush, again along the shape of the model. You can't really go wrong, but if you do, you can always fix it with a little bit of black paint. Finally, it's back to Fenrisian Grey, and again, use this fairly sparingly, but use the shape of the model and the tip of the brush to get a nice sharp highlight. The last thing we'll do before we have a look at the model on the turntable is highlight all of the cream areas, and I'm just going to use white for this. You can use whatever white you have, which is your favourite white, and I'm looking to catch the edges. I'm not being too tidy, I'm being a little bit messy because I may go back and wear this later on, but if not, I'll just come back in and tidy it up with a little bit of Wraithbone, which you can do too if you make any mistakes. And once this is all done, I'll pop some matte varnish on and we'll have a look at it on the turntable. So there we have it. This Hekaton Land Fortress is done, and I'm really happy with how the orange has come out. I think it really pops on the turntable, and it's going to really look good on the tabletop as well. If you're interested in how I use the same colours to get my infantry painted, make sure you click the link here and watch that video. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.